Welcome everyone to our meeting today, October 21st. We're glad to have everyone here, and welcome to all of our members from all over the world, including Australia and England. And we have some guests today from Fort Myers Mac User Group. They invited us weeks ago to a meeting when Joe spoke with them, and we reciprocated by inviting them to join us today. Our meetings are every single Wednesday, same time, same place. And for the foreseeable future, they will all be Zoom meetings. I want to continue to congratulate our 49 new members for taking advantage of our special promotion, which runs through November 1st. And we certainly hope they sign up and stick around and have enjoyed their experience. And we've enjoyed having you. I have announced the Zoom classes for January, February, March, and registration will start on our classes on November 1st. And here's a list of some of our classes. I will make a video of this presentation, and all this will be available. These are our class presenters, many of which you've members of our own club. And Joe Kissell will be doing a class. Dan Wazink from Dan's Tutorials, and Rosemary Orchard will also be doing a class. So we'll have 3 inside class presenters and 3 outside. The October 28th meeting, which is next week, will be a meeting about our classes. We started last year taking the last week of October and going through our class schedule, some of the information from each and every class. And also Eckert will have a lot to talk about how we're going to handle the class through Zoom this year and the sign-up process and so forth. So next week is a very important meeting. All the classes this year will be on Zoom. And so I hopefully will have a big attendance next week to watch that meeting. On November 4th, Sheeta will be back with a Q&A on all Apple devices. And today's meeting is Joe Kissell. He's going to cover Big Sur. We really appreciate your coming and being with us today, Joe. It's an honor for us to have you, and it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Nice to be here. You know, when we scheduled this meeting, way back whenever it was, I assumed, and I think probably everybody assumed, that Big Sur would be shipping by now, and it isn't. So some of the things we talk about today are going to be a little bit speculative. In a normal year, the new iOS and the new Mac OS would ship around the same time. That has tended to be in late September, although sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later. Obviously, there was a bit of a delay in some things due to the pandemic, and Apple hasn't told us when Big Sur is going to finally ship. It's been in beta since the summer. Could ship tomorrow, could ship in November, because there is a plausible rumor that we're going to be seeing some new Macs next month. But of course, the public beta is available now. Anybody can download it and install it if you want to. That's what I'll be showing you today. There could still be some changes between today and when the final release is, whenever that is, whether it's this week or in a month. But I will tell you what I know. I'm going to show you around, and I'll answer as many questions as I can. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen here. I have... That's interesting. I'm seeing something in Zoom I've never seen before. Well, let's see if it works. Oh, I see. All right, hang on a second. I, I had this all set up. I was doing the test on my my Catalina partition, but now that I've switched to Big Sur, for the purposes of the demonstration, I have to set up my system preferences to allow sharing with all the necessary things. So give me a second here. You know, weird. Anytime you switch to a new operating system, you upgrade or whatever, there are all these security things. You know, do you want to allow this? Do you want to allow that? And you got to kind of go through the process. And Zoom hadn't asked me yet. So let's go in here. There we go. Proving my Apple Watch. And let's see here. I need to give Zoom. Oh, well, in order to let Zoom access my screen, I've got to quit and reopen Zoom. Ugh.
Joe, is
So,
it asking you if you want to record?
it is asking, but I think that's part of sharing my screen.
No, it's not. If
It's
you
not.
say it's not, if you say later, is
Okay.
there a button that says later or ask later or
Yes.
do it later? You can go ahead and click that button and you should still be able to share without quitting out of Zoom.
All right, let's give it a try. This is gonna be fun. All right,
Yep.
are you seeing slides now?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Hey, all right. Thank you for that tip, Cheetah.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'm here on the other coast from most of you, and as always, macOS 11 has been named after a California landmark. This is Big Sur. It's something that if you were driving all the way up the coast from Southern California to Northern California, this scenic viewpoint you might pass. So what I'm going to do today is just quickly tell you about my book on Big Sur and about how to save some money on take control purchases. I'm going to run through a few features that I can't show you, but I'm going to tell you about them. Then we're going to pop out of Keynote. I'm going to share my whole screen. We'll demonstrate a lot of stuff in Big Sur. I have a list here of stuff I want to show you. And then we'll go back into Keynote. I will list some other things that are a little bit hard to demonstrate. I'll tell you about how you would go about upgrading to Big Sur when the time comes, and I'll invite your questions. So we'll just be in Keynote here for a couple of minutes. As most of my presentations are, they're based on one of my books. I've written a lot of books, and this is my most recent one, Take Control of Big Sur. For ordinary people, it's $15, but for you, $10.49. There's a coupon code there. You can write it down. I will show it to you again later on. This will save you 30% on any purchase of any number of books from Take Control Books. We have lots of titles on all kinds of stuff. A lot of it is related to Apple products in some way, Apple apps and Apple devices, but a lot of it is platform neutral too. We have stuff on online privacy and your digital legacy and dealing with passwords and tons of stuff. So I think you'll find a lot of useful and interesting things there. I hope you will take advantage of that. And of course, this being an excerpt, a sort of live excerpt from a book, I'm not going to do a dramatic reading. I hope that's okay with you. I can only share with you a tiny fraction of what's, all the details in this 140-page book. So if you are intrigued by what you see and hear today, I hope you will go and fetch the book for yourself. Almost all of what I talk about today is going to be what's new in Big Sur, and I'm going to show you a bunch of the things that are new. But I wanted to start with some of the things that I just wanted to mention some of the things that are going to be important to you that I can't really show. So here are some of the things that you can't see. Now, this is very exciting for me. It may or may not be exciting for you. Some people love this, some people hate this. But one of the things you will notice after you install Big Sur, even in the process of installing Big Sur, is that an old friend is back. It's this friend. That's right, the startup chime is back. It's been gone for about 4 years. Almost every new Mac model released since about 2016 has not had a startup sound, and in Big Sur, it's back. I wish that they had come up with a new startup sound because this one has been around for a long time. It used to be, they'd change it with every Mac model, but it's nice to have the startup sound back. If you don't want the startup sound, you can turn it off, but you need to enter some stuff in terminal. I have instructions on doing this in the book. For that matter, if you're using an earlier operating system and you want the startup sound, you can use those instructions to turn that on too. The really big news about Big Sur, the biggest thing, the most important thing by far about Big Sur is that it will support the new Macs that are coming starting later this year that will have Apple Silicon instead of Intel chips. Now, this is something that has been rumored for many, many years. Obviously, your Apple Watch, your iPhone, your iPad, your HomePod, your Apple TV, all of the other Apple devices have processors that are designed and built by Apple. And there's been some grief, some sadness in the Mac world for a while because Intel has kind of dropped the ball. Intel has not been making very much progress very fast on coming up with more powerful, faster, more energy efficient processors. They've really, really been lagging behind. And so that in turn has slowed down the development of new Macs. And we also know from long experience, Apple likes to have control of everything. They don't want to leave any pieces in other people's hands. Also, I should mention, Intel processors are kind of expensive. So Apple, by designing their own chips, is trying to solve all those problems. They're trying to make Macs faster. They're trying to make them, the batteries on portable Macs last longer. They're trying to add new features that they couldn't get with Intel chips. And of course, they're trying to save money and make sure that the development of these chips proceeds at the pace that they would like. So Apple Silicon Macs are coming probably next month. We think that the first model of Mac that will feature an Apple design chip will be some type of MacBook. We don't know exactly what it will look like, but we do know that since the announcement this past summer, in the space of 2 years, Apple intends to transition all their Macs to Apple Silicon. By the way, I say silicon. Apple people tend to say silicon, but that's okay because, like, I'm bilingual in American and Canadian English, so I can adapt. But anyway, Apple chips are coming. And of course, you will need a new version of Mac OS to support them. And Big Sur is that one. Now, Big Sur still runs on Intel chips. I'm using a Mac right here that has an Intel chip in it. I don't have one of the Apple Silicon machines that are available right now only to developers. But this operating system will work on both. Now, there are many interesting things about Apple's chips, and I don't want to get too far into it, but one of the interesting things that will be possible on those new Macs is that you'll be able to run an iOS app or an iPadOS app on your Mac without any modification at all. No special emulators or virtualization or whatever doohickeys. You'll just be able to download an iPad app and run it on your Mac. End of story. Now, obviously, I can't show you that today because that feature will work only on the Macs that have the new chips, and we don't have those yet, but we might have them in a month. So that's a thing to look forward to. Back to here. Now, another thing I can't really show you is, let's say you have some AirPods, and you have multiple devices. You've got your iPhone and iPad and your Mac. One of the things that you will be able to do in Big Sur is have the audio switch between your devices automatically without a lot of like, going to menus and control center and switching them. So that's handy. And Time Machine, which of course everybody should be using. Of course, there are other ways to back up your Mac. You should be using some way of backing up your Mac. But if you use Time Machine, there's a new feature that finally, after all these years, you will be able to back up your Mac to a volume like an external hard drive or SSD that is formatted using the new APFS file system. Now, APFS has been around for a few years, but up until now, you haven't been able to use that as a Time Machine destination. Even though your Mac might be formatted as APFS, you couldn't back up to an APFS drive. Now, this is cool because when you do this, your backups will use space much more efficiently, and they will also be more reliable. But I say sort of because there's also some some gotchas there. We'll get to those a little bit later. Now, one of the things that's important to me, because I'm kind of a geek and I spend a lot of time in terminal, and I've written a book about automating your Mac, and I'm always writing scripts and macros and things. Apple had previously said that these scripting languages that you would normally access from the command line, like Perl and Python and Ruby, Apple had previously said those would disappear after Catalina, but they didn't. Now, maybe they're just in the betas and Apple will take them away later. I don't know, but I'm happy to see that they are still around. Even if Apple took them away, you could still download them. But I think for the purposes of automation, it's really handy to still have those built in. So that was an unexpected thing that I'm happy about. All right, we're gonna talk about some more stuff later, but first, let me switch out of this type of screen sharing and start this kind of screen sharing. And I'm going to now hide that and hide that. All right, deny, great. So here is Big Sur. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour, show you some of the new stuff. There might be some things that make you unhappy or that you have questions about. So if there are some things that I don't cover, make a little note. You can type it in the chat, and Cheetah will take note of that. And we will talk about them later in the Q&A session. So just to kind of get your bearings here, and I'm sure that most of you saw the keynote when Apple introduced Big Sur. You probably looked at Apple's website. You're familiar generally with what we're talking about here. The first, and I'm just gonna go ahead and do this here just to get that off my screen. All right. The first thing you may notice is, well, it looks a lot more like an iPad than a Mac. You'll notice all of the apps, the icons for Apple's apps have these rounded rectangles, and the corners here of all the windows are much more round than they used to be. And you'll also notice things are sort of spaced more widely apart. There's more space between the menus, and there's more vertical space between the items on menus. It's a little bit maybe hard to see in this view, but if you compared it side by side with Catalina, that would be quite obvious that things are more widely spaced. It's almost as if Apple wants to make sure that when in the future you are touching the screen with your fingertip instead of clicking with a little mouse pointer, that you don't hit the wrong thing. A lot of people are saying, I'll bet you that the new Macs that have Apple Silicon also have touch screens. Now, Apple has not made any statements about this. We don't know for sure, but it seems kind of likely. So that's just a thing to keep in mind. Might happen, wouldn't be surprised if it did. Now, I'm not really personally a fan of this style of icons. I wish they looked more different from each other. I don't really see the point in having everything look like a tile. And a lot of people said, well, you know, geez, this it doesn't look like a Mac anymore. It looks more like an iPad, and it looks more cartoonish. And okay, you know, it kind of does. But honestly, I got used to this pretty fast. And I do not find it objectionable anymore. And I would certainly expect that you will get used to it pretty quickly too. Now, a couple of other things I want to point out here in terms of just look and feel. The sidebar of the window, let me just hide this for a moment. The sidebar over here now goes all the way from the top of the window to the bottom, and the toolbar starts over here at the edge of the sidebar. Now, it used to be that the toolbar went all the way across, left to right, and the sidebar started down here. This kind of full height sidebar, you will see across lots of apps. You will see it in Mail, you will see it in Maps, you will see it in almost every app that uses a sidebar, so we will see this again. And the toolbar itself looks a lot different. All the icons are different. Things are rearranged. It's a little bit weird, but again, functionally, it's almost exactly the same. And I found that once I got used to it, I didn't even notice it anymore. Now, one of the things that you will see here is that, and this is not new, but it's more pronounced than it used to be. The sidebar is a little bit translucent. So as I drag it over different parts of the screen, you can see the color changes a little bit. And Apple keeps making a big deal about the fact that, isn't this great? You can see your desktop picture through the sidebar and through the menu bar at the top of your window. And I'm like, why? I don't want to see that. Like, the purpose of my screen is not to show a big picture. The purpose of my screen is to show the stuff I'm working with. And personally, I find all this translucency to be an irritation, a distraction. It means that things that could have a lot more contrast and be easier to see and read because they're black on white are now like white on some other weird color. So I want to show you how to do the first thing that I do on any Mac that is running Big Sur, and that's to turn off the translucency. By the way, you know, I'm going to show you some of this stuff up here later too. Here's Control Center, we'll be talking about in a minute. And you know, all these little doohickeys up here also are very translucent, more so than they used to be. If you don't like that, and I don't, go into System Preferences and into Accessibility and click Display, and then just click Reduce Transparency. Now, for me, this is a breath of fresh air because now the sidebar is opaque and the dock down here is opaque and the menu bar is opaque as God intended, and the menus are opaque. For me, this is much more pleasant and usable. By the way, the dock, I'll just mention, you have to look a little bit carefully, but it's no longer connected to the bottom of the screen or the side if you put it on the side. It now sort of floats a little bit, which, I mean, I thought a dock should be something that's attached to the border, I would think. They're playing a little fast and loose with definitions of English words, but whatever. Now, I mentioned that we have the startup sound back. But all the other sounds have changed too. So if you go into System Preferences, and this is something that you're going to see, you're going to hear this throughout Mac OS, but we'll go into the sound preference pane, into the sound effects. And all of these sounds here are either changed in some way or brand new. So I'll just go through a few of them here. So some of these are simply versions, you know, redone versions of the old sounds. Some of them are completely new sounds. I find that that when I hear error, like alert sounds, that is when I most notice that that I'm in Big Sur, that I'm doing something different. So that's another little thing. All right, so let's go into some of the new features. Those of you who have used an iPhone or an iPad for a while, which I would guess is most of you, are going to say, these things look amazingly familiar. So let's begin with the brand new Notification Center. Now in Catalina and earlier, there was a tiny little icon right up here in the corner that you would click to show Notification Center. That icon is gone. Now you just click the date and the time. Now, of course, you can still change the format of the date and time to show more or less, but I'm just going to click the date, and now this pops in. This is a little bit different. Now, as before, if an app wants to notify you of something, wants to actually put an alert of some kind up on the screen, those will appear up here at the top. I don't happen to have any interesting ones to look at this moment. But down here, all of these things, and it will scroll, are editable widgets. And so it's sort of harking back to the days of dashboard. Now you have a bunch of customizable widgets. You have a weather widget and a calendar widget, and world time and stocks, and bunch of other things that you can customize. So if I click the weather widget, for example, it's going to bring up the weather forecast for where I happen to be at the moment. So the existing widgets are probably pretty self-explanatory, but if you don't like these widgets, you can add other ones, or you can take away these widgets. You scroll down and click Edit Widgets. Now, at the moment, on this particular machine, I only have the widgets that Apple has included with macOS 11. Third-party widgets should also be available, but not until after Big Sur ships. Most of the widgets come in more than one size. So for example here, let me just scroll down. Oh, I haven't connected to my photos yet, so I can't show you that. But here's the daily activity widget, and you'll see it comes in small, medium, and large sizes. Now over here on the right, I'm showing the large size. Let's say I wanted to get rid of the stocks app. So let's stocks widget. So I'll just do that. And let's drag over the small size of this. And then maybe I want the small size of something else, like a list, and I can drag it over there. If I want the medium size instead, I can put that over there like that. If I want the super large size. So you can have whatever combination of sizes and shapes of whichever widgets you like, whatever suits your needs, you can arrange them however you want them. And this is just a way of giving you quick access to things that you might need to notice off in your reminders, and the things that are playing next in music or podcasts, time and weather and things of that sort. So that's Notification Center. And again, the actual notifications of Notification Center will appear up here at the top the same way as they always have. And to hide this, of course, you will just click the date again. Now, I should mention, although it is not the case in this beta that I'm showing you right now, this weather widget is going to incorporate data from the Dark Sky app. So Dark Sky was an iOS and iPadOS app. I've used it for years. It's great for giving you hyperlocal weather, like you get an alert, it's about to start raining, and 2 seconds later, it starts raining. So it's all about your very, very specific location. Apple acquired Dark Sky, what is it, a year or so ago, I forget, and they're going to start incorporating their own weather forecasts into macOS that are a lot more specific and accurate than the ones that you get from something like weather.com. All right, so another new thing, and again, this will be very familiar to you if you are an iOS or iPadOS user, is Control Center. There's this tiny little icon up here in the menu bar. It looks like a couple of switches. If I click that, I get Control Center. Now, Control Center is mainly intended to give you quick access to a bunch of switches that you would otherwise have to dig around for in system preferences. So if you want to turn on or off your Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, AirDrop, Do Not Disturb, screen mirroring, if you want to change the brightness of your display or your sound level or play, pause, rewind music, all those kinds of things are just one click away in Control Center. This does not give you any new capabilities. So there were still other ways of doing all these things, either from a menu bar icon or from system preferences. There are really two purposes to this. And one is to make it easier to get to things that you would otherwise need to go to system preferences for. But the other thing is to reduce menu bar clutter, because remember, the icons are spaced more widely now. And so as a result, this particular installation of Big Sur that you're looking at now does not have my full array of menu bar icons. Normally I have about 30 of them. So, so that can really fill up your menu bar. And what this does is it gives you a way to consolidate things. So I could turn off I could turn off the Wi-Fi menu as a separate menu item, go in here to Network Preferences, and I could uncheck Show Wi-Fi Status in Menu Bar, but that's okay because it's still there in Control Center. And if I click this here, I get the same thing that was on that standalone Wi-Fi menu. So it's the same thing with Bluetooth. It's the same thing with screen mirroring. It's the same thing with the sound. Instead, you can put those icons back if you want. But if you want to save space on your menu bar and do some things with 2 clicks instead of 1 click, Control Center is a way to do it. Now, there are a few other things that you can add to Control Center that aren't there by default. For example, if you go into the accessibility pane of system preferences, somewhere, oh yes, sorry, down here, show accessibility status in menu bar, you can put that up there. But for the most part, you can't really customize this a whole lot. Now, what you can do is if you have an icon up there in your menu bar like that, you can something has changed. So you used to be able to drag this in. I'll have to figure out what's going on with that. But what you can do is if you have like the sound thing down here and you want to put that on your menu bar, you can actually drag it up to your menu bar. If you don't want it there anymore, you can hold down the command key and drag it off to remove it. So it used to be that in the previous beta, you could add the accessibility thing to Control Center. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong place here. I will have to go back and check my notes. All right, so moving on. We'll come back to, well, let's get rid of this. Let's go to the Maps app. Now, there's a lot of new stuff in Maps. Normally, when I'm using Maps, I tend to use it on a device that I'm going to take with me, a device that, my iPhone, if I'm out for a walk or I'm in the car, or an iPad. But there are a lot of things that have been available on mobile devices that are now also available on your Mac. So if you are planning a trip or you're just doing research, there are a lot of things that that you can now do on your Mac that you might not have been able to do before, and there are some new features too. So let me just take you through a few of them. You'll notice, of course, the sidebar is new. It's pretty self-explanatory, your favorite places, guides, which I'll talk about in a minute, places you have visited or searched for recently, and all this stuff is customizable. So guides. What Apple has done, and this is a little bit weird because this is all about like vacation planning, and I remember when I used to be able to take vacations. Now, not so much. Tourist attractions are closed and borders are closed and so forth. But in a hypothetical future in which we can all travel freely again, this might be handy. So I'm going to use, in most of my examples, I'm going to use San Francisco because when a new feature in Maps rolls out, Apple almost always does San Francisco first. And then they'll add, you know, New York and LA and Chicago, and then it'll eventually trickle down to other cities. So a lot of these features don't yet appear for San Diego, for example, and I would guess they probably don't appear in Naples either. But most of the new things are available in San Francisco. So I'm just going to type San Francisco. And if I do that, one of the things that will happen is this little popover appears. And as I scroll down, there are these guides. Now, these are provided by third parties. This is by Culture Trip and Complex and the Washington Post and so forth. There's also, of course, Wikipedia article. But these are travel guides, and you can click here to see even more of them. Red Tricycle. So if I'm interested in the botanical gardens in the Bay Area, I can click this, and it's going to highlight all those items on the map, and then I can go here to read more about them. So these are professionally done, curated guides for certain areas, certain places that are now built into maps. But you can also create your own guide. Now, the guides you create yourself are a little bit different. So if you say, well, you know, here's a place in France that I visited that's pretty cool. If you visit that place and you decide, oh, well, you know, I want to add that to a guide, you can add that to a guide. The guides that you make yourself are really nothing more than just lists of places. They don't include, of course, the reviews and all the other cool stuff in other guides. But you can add a list of interesting places or multiple lists of interesting places, either as part of trip planning or just, you know, places you'd like to take your family when they come to visit you or things of that sort. Now, there are also indoor maps. So I'm going to use as my example here SFO. Yeah. So here's the airport, and as I zoom in, I start seeing things inside. Oh, there's, you know, Starbucks and Burger King and so forth. And the more you zoom in, the more of the other things you see, you know, all the little shops and the gate numbers, where the restrooms are, all the restaurants, those sorts of things. So this is, again, not totally universal yet. This is a feature that is mainly for airports and shopping malls. It could expand to other places in the future, and it will certainly expand to more shopping malls and more airports. I'm just, I don't know. So I'm just gonna check. All of America. Hey, look at that. So as I zoom in, I see more and more and more places inside. Now, this particular map isn't super useful in that it's not like showing me any walls or halls. It's just it's just like a bunch of different stores that seem to be dotted around a vast open area. And I've been to the Mall of America, and I know that it's not like that. But the point of this feature is to help you more easily navigate indoor spaces as well as outdoor spaces. Let's go back to San Francisco for a moment. Now, I'm just gonna pick an arbitrary point here, and I'm gonna say this is where I am. All right. And I'm gonna say I want to ride my bicycle to Fisherman's Wharf over here. Oops, sorry. Let's go back here. I'm just gonna, again, choose a random spot. Let's get directions. Now there's a new icon up here, and that is cycling directions. No, I really don't want to cycle all the way from San Diego to San Francisco. Let's go to Lombard Street in San Francisco. All right, so it's going to give me a couple of routes. And if you choose a bike route, it's going to mention, and I just did this entirely arbitrarily, so I didn't actually plan this in advance. But one of the things it will show you on this map is where you're going to encounter some hills, where you might encounter steps, where, you know, the best way to bike to a place is not necessarily the best way to walk to a place or drive. So now you can get bike directions that sort of are sensitive to topographical features. So for those of you who bike, that could be quite useful. Now, Lombard Street is, of course, this scenic location. It's this very twisty road, and you might want to see what it actually looks like. So now the look around feature, which is kind of like Google Street View, is also available in Apple Maps for Mac. So if you click the little binoculars icon up here on the toolbar and move around to this space, I'm going to expand this, and I'm going to, whoops, there we go. So you can move around in any direction you want. You can see the crowds of people taking pictures of Lombard Street. And of course, you can move up and down the streets, even if they are very twisty. And even if you are going against traffic, of course, you couldn't go up here in this direction in real life. And it's sort of making me a little bit dizzy. But anyway, very much like Google Street View, only honestly, it's smoother and it's prettier. And you can turn around the other way and get a nice view. All right, so, and as with all of these features, it's not universal. You can't do this in every location in the world, but Apple's working on it. So some other things that are in Maps, if you are, let's say you're in your car, you're driving to your friend's house, you have mapped your route to their house on your iPhone, it's in your car, and you have shared your travel plans with your friend. Now your friend can go in here to Maps on their Mac and watch as the little dot moves. They can get a live ETA estimate. This is optional, but you can do it if you like. If you have an electric car and you are planning a trip across the country or to wherever, the Maps app in macOS can now figure out the best route that includes charging stations for you. I don't have an electric car yet, so I can't even show you this feature, but I can imagine that would be very handy. All right, so that's Maps. Now, Safari has a lot of changes. Let's go into Safari. I'm going to go over here to the start page. Now, there already was a start page in Safari, but it was kind of lame, and now it is a bit less lame and more customizable. So I have not yet customized this. This is just what it happened to give me. So, you know, it has some favorites here, privacy report we'll talk about in a minute, Siri suggestions, reading list, and stuff on other devices. So this is customizable to a certain extent. Now, favorites, you can add or remove favorites just as you always could. But I'm going to go down here to this little control panel icon in the lower right corner. And this is where you enable or disable various categories. So if you just really don't want to see Siri suggestions or your reading list or whatever, you can take those out of here. You can put them back in. I'll just take out a couple. You can also add a background color if you like. This one has a little bit of magenta in it. That looks kind of pretty. So what you can do here is add a background, which can be one of these or an image of your own. You can turn on or off these various sections. Now, of course, you can add items to reading list, add items to favorites, just as you always could. Other devices of yours that use iCloud and have stuff open, you can see I've been looking for weather stripping, okay? But those open tabs on those other devices will show up here. So you can't drag these things around to other areas. You can't directly customize them on this screen, but you can enable or disable various categories and then add to them in their own way. Now, the privacy report is kind of interesting. I've written a book called Take Control of Your Online Privacy. I'm kind of enthusiastic about protecting my privacy online. And, you know, most of the websites you visit have a lot of ads on them, and those ads usually include trackers that will track you as you go from one website to the next, and that is really a significant privacy concern. So I've opened up some websites here that happen to have a lot of trackers on them, CNN and Washington Post, New York Times, and whatever. And there's this little icon here, this little shield. So if you click that, it will say, well, CNN was trying to use 35 different trackers to profile me and figure out who I am so that they can show me better ads. Which ones were those? Well, I can click this list, and here's this whole long list of all the different trackers that CNN was trying to load when I visited this website. I don't know what the record is. I'm pretty sure people have found more than 50 on a page. But let's see, Washington Post has a mere 24. New York Times has, sorry, this the Zoom toolbar keeps popping in here. Oops. Has only 15. In any case, if you want to see what trackers were blocked on this particular page, you just click the shield icon. If you want to see all of the trackers that Safari has blocked recently, you click this in the start page, and here, oh, well, 90 different trackers on 70% of the websites that I've visited in the last 30 days. Now, this is, again, just my test installation of Big Sur. So in real life, these numbers would be quite a bit higher. Weather.com, 53 trackers. Good grief. Why do they need 53 trackers? I have no idea. Now, of course, not all websites are awful. Let's just take a completely random website, like Take Control Books. There it is. Now let's see, how many trackers are here? None, because we're not evil. We don't track you at all. And thank you, Apple, for acknowledging that fact. So we don't have ads. We don't have any need to track you. We just want you to buy our books. So it's nice to get that little validation. Now, let's say I'm on a site like Take Control Books, and I go to the catalog, and I'm like, oh boy, I want so many of these books. It's just like you would do in a web search. What if I command click to open that in another tab, and I command click that, and I command click that, and I command click that. And as I keep opening tabs in the background, oh man, look at this. So one of the things you'll notice is all the tabs have icons, but I've opened so many that the icon is the only thing that's left. Well, I've opened all these different books. How do I know which one is which? Well, if you hover over one of these closed tabs, you'll get a little preview. And so you can see just by hovering over the preview what is on that page. And of course, that's true for any of these tabs. So that's for people who like to have lots of tabs open at once and sometimes get lost in kind of what's on what tab. That's a very handy thing. Now, another thing that is useful for many of us is a translation feature. So I've opened up a page here on a website in France. Now I can read this because I speak French and I used to live in France, but probably not everyone can. So what you would do is go to the View menu and down to Translation and choose Translate to English. And we'll go ahead and enable that. And there it is. It took about 2 seconds. And not just the headline, but the entire article was translated from French into English. Now, this works with a bunch of different languages, and you can set up your own language pairs. So if you want to be able to translate, let's say, from German into Spanish, you can do that. Does not use all of the world's languages yet, does not do every possible pair. But you got a site in Chinese, in Spanish, French, German, a few other languages. You want to read it in English. You can now do that with one click, and I think that is pretty cool. And if you're like, well, I'm reading an article in English, I wonder what that would be like in French. You can also set up manually another language pair. I'm not going to show you how to do that, but you would go into here and choose preferred languages. and choose a different language pair, and then that pair would appear on this menu, and you can translate into a different language. You want to go back to whatever the language originally was, you just click View Original. All right, so that's Safari. There are some new things in the App Store. Oh, what's new in the App Store and Arcade? Now, I am not what you would call an enthusiastic gamer. That's just not my thing, not my world. I do talk about what's new in Apple Arcade in my book, if you're interested. That a lot of those features are tied into the App Store. But a lot of the new stuff is, see what your friends are doing, that kind of thing. I don't really care. But there is some new stuff in the App Store. It has just a different look now. I haven't in this particular copy of Big Sur, I haven't signed in, and I don't want to. But there is new stuff here. Of course, it has that full height sidebar, the different toolbar, and the stuff here is just rearranged. And it actually, I have found it to be more helpful in finding stuff that is useful to me than it used to be. And of course, arcade games are going to go in here as usual. Now, there are a lot of other things that I am just not going to show you. For example, as you have been able to do for a long time on your iPhone, you can make Memoji, little animated characters that sort of look like your face or however you want them to look. I tried to make a Memoji that looked like me, and it does not look anything like me. And there are a lot of things like new stuff in Mail and new stuff in calendar and reminders and FaceTime and messages. But this is my actual, I'm signed into all my accounts here. And so I can't show you those things without also showing you all of my private messages, which I would kind of rather not do. There are some new features in the Photos app, but they're not that big a deal. And again, I would have to show you my actual photos to show you those features. So I'm not going to do that now. But I am going to switch back into Keynote for last few things, then we'll take questions. So I will go back to, whoops, here. All right, some more of what's new. Family sharing. Now, I have used family sharing in my family for quite a few years. I got 4 people. I've lost track of how many iPads and iPhones and Macs we have, a lot. Family sharing lets a family of up to 6 share purchases with each other, as well as music and calendars and reminders and location, all kinds of other stuff. Thing is, though, up until now, if I make an in-app purchase, like a subscription or an extra feature in some app, that in-app purchase or subscription is not shared with my other family members. They have to buy their own. Well, now in Big Sur, it's possible to share those too. Now, it's not automatic. Every developer has to manually add support for this, and they could opt not to, but they couldn't even opt in before. So that's very nice, because I do have apps where I've purchased extra features or in-app subscriptions, and now I'll be able to share those with my family as well. So that's very nice. There are smaller changes, which I document in the book. In a lot of apps. Notes has new features, and Music has new features, and Home has new features, and Spotlight has new features, and so on. And you can read about some of these on Apple's website, and you can read about all of them in my book. They're the sorts of things that, they're not that exciting to demonstrate, but there are tons and tons of other little things which, individually they're just slightly useful, but as a whole, they're much more useful. Now, we come to the big question, should you upgrade? Now, of course, you can't upgrade yet, unless you want to install a beta. You can install a beta if you want. We don't know when the final version will ship. Probably, I'm thinking, next month. But when that time comes, should you upgrade? Is it a good idea? Is it safe? Well, a couple things to say about that. First of all, you have to make sure that you're using a fairly new Mac, because not all of them are compatible. So this is the current list. Obviously, the new Macs that Apple will announce in a month or so will be added to this list. there are a few models of Mac that were compatible with Catalina, but that are no longer compatible with Big Sur. So if your Mac is not on this list, I'm sorry to say, not going to work. But raw compatibility is not the only story. As has been true for a couple of revisions now, Big Sur works much, much better on an SSD than on a mechanical hard drive or even on a Fusion drive. So if, for example, you have an iMac that has a mechanical hard drive in it and not an SSD, Big Sur is going to be kind of slow. It's going to be really, really slow. Even on a Fusion drive, it's not nearly as fast as on an SSD. So that might be something that would give me pause. Of course, you're going to want to have a decent amount of RAM and a decent amount of disk space as well. In addition, there are some gotchas that might make you say, even if I have a compatible Mac, I'm not sure I really want to take the leap just yet. Now, I will say, as is always the case, there will be some apps that are not immediately compatible with Big Sur, and you'll have to check with the developers, and hopefully over time they will be updated. But apart from that, there are a few other things. Now, if you are not already using Catalina, that is, if you are still on Mojave or earlier, you might have some 32-bit apps. 32-bit apps do not work in Big Sur, just as they did not work in Catalina. Big Sur only supports 64-bit apps. So you want to check, and there's an app that you can download called Go64 that will show you any apps that you still have on your computer, if it's running Mojave or earlier, that are only 32-bit apps. If you have any of those, they won't work anymore under Big Sur, so you have to either upgrade them or replace them with something else. Bootable duplicates, type of backup where you take an external hard drive, you copy everything on your Mac to that external hard drive, and now you have a complete clone. And you can even start up from that external hard drive if you need to. If something goes wrong with your internal storage, you can boot up from that and get back to work very quickly. And I have advocated bootable duplicates as an important part of any responsible backup plan for years. Well, in Big Sur, there are some problems. First problem is, the most important problem, is you can't actually make a bootable duplicate. So apps like Carbon Copy Cloner and SuperDuper and ChronoSync and Retrospect, all these apps which for years have been able to make complete bit-by-bit copy of one startup volume onto another, they can't do it anymore in Big Sur because of some security changes Apple has made. Now, you may recall, as was the case in Catalina, there are actually two volumes now. There's a read-only system volume that just contains Mac OS itself. And then there's another volume that has all of the stuff that you've added, all of your apps and your data and your files and so forth. Now, it looks in the Finder as though there's only one volume, but really, behind the scenes, there are two. And that was the case in Catalina. But what is newly the case in Big Sur is that Apple does not currently allow third-party apps to copy that read-only system volume. So if you use an app like Carbon Copy Cloner, you can still make a copy of the data volume to an external hard drive, but you can't copy over this system volume. What I hear is that these developers are working with Apple to once again make this possible at some point. Will that point be when Big Sur is released? I have no idea. Will that point be this year or ever? I don't know. It might not be possible to make a bootable duplicate anymore. Now, there's a workaround. And the workaround is that you go ahead and just duplicate the data volume, just your own stuff. Then you run the Big Sur installer and install Big Sur on that volume. And once you've done that, you will end up with a duplicate that is bootable. But if later on you update Big Sur, the operating system itself, you will have to once again download the full installer and run that installer on that duplicate to make that bootable. Now, of course, if you're creating this bootable duplicate on an external hard drive, that's going to be crazy slow to start up from anyway. My revised advice is that if you're creating a duplicate, you ought to probably get an external SSD instead. But I'm just saying bootable duplicates have become a bit of a pain. Kernel extensions. Now, there are lots of these apps that do, behind the scenes stuff like networking and privacy and ad blocking and virtual machines and stuff. Most of these third-party kernel extensions or KEXTs are now blocked in Big Sur. So there is a new mechanism that you can use, that developers can use to give you most of that same functionality, but some of the apps have been updated to use this new mechanism. Some of them haven't. Some of them can't be. So that's something you're going to have to check into, see if any of the apps you use require these extensions. If you have been using Boot Camp to run Windows on your Mac, you can't do it anymore. Big Sur does not support, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. Big Sur on Apple Silicon. Okay, Big Sur running on Apple Silicon does not support Boot Camp. Now, if you use Parallels Desktop or VMware Fusion or VirtualBox to run Windows in a virtual machine, that is also going to be a big problem on Apple Silicon, because even though the apps will work, because the processor itself is different, you can no longer run Windows. You can run Linux in a virtual machine. You can probably, maybe, we'll see, run a different version of Mac OS in a virtual machine. But as things stand now, unless Apple and Microsoft work together and come up with a solution, as things stand right now, you will not be able to run Windows in any fashion on a Mac that has an Apple chip, an Apple Silicon, an Apple CPU. Now, that's not necessarily gonna be a problem if you keep your old Intel Mac for a while, but if you have, if your intention is to buy a new Mac next month and it's important to you to be able to run Windows, that could be a problem for you. So supposing you say, okay, whatever, I'm good, I want to upgrade, I meet all the criteria, I don't care about those things. How do you do it? Well, I've got like 50 pages in my book devoted to this. I go into excruciating detail. I am not going to give you excruciating detail right now. I'm going to give you just a few tips. While you're still running your old operating system, you want to do some cleanup. You're going to at least want to have 20 gigabytes of free disk space or SSD space. Get rid of anything that you don't need anymore, any old apps that might not be compatible. Update as much software as you can. It's going to be a way better experience for you to update your apps first and then install Big Sur, rather than to install Big Sur first and then try to update your apps. So as much as possible, update all your software first. While it's still possible, because it's still possible in Catalina, go ahead and make a bootable duplicate, because that will give you a safety net as you are doing your upgrade. It'll give you a way to downgrade if you should need to do that. And then go ahead and download the Big Sur installer. If you're doing it today, you would have to sign up for Apple's beta program, which of course is free and anybody can do it. Once Big Sur is released, you should find it in the Mac App Store. Now, the book goes into excruciating detail, as I said, about all the steps that you do before, during, and after the installation, and different paths you can do during the installation. Do you want to just do an in-place upgrade, or do you want to do a completely clean install? I will tell you all those details. In this book, again, I will remind you, take control of Big Sur. Now, as soon as Big Sur is released, I'm going to update this book to talk about any of the new things that I've learned since the betas, because clearly some stuff is going to change. I don't know that it will be exactly the same day that Big Sur ships, because I don't know when that's going to be. But hopefully within 2 or 3 days after Big Sur ships, there will be a free update to this book that will talk about all the new stuff and clarify some things that might have been unclear or that might have changed since the beta process. So once again, this is the code you need. This will save you 30% on all Take Control books, as many as you want to buy, as often as you want to buy them. I hope that you will take advantage of that and tell all your friends. So with that, I'm going to pop out of screen sharing and see what questions you have.
I do have a question, Joe. First, I just want to express my exasperation in some of the things you said, because that means I'll be holding on to Catalina for quite a while.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. My question was when you were just demonstrating Safari.
Mm-hmm.
With the trackers, do you have a setting that you automatically tell it to block the trackers, or does Safari now block them on its own?
Yeah, there's not a setting, so it just blocks them automatically. I'm just looking at my, so there are still limited settings that you can enable or disable. If I click, yeah, so even if I turn off, there is still a preference. Right. Okay. Sorry. All right. So I misspoke. There is a preference. If you go into Safari's preferences pane, go to privacy. There is a preference called website tracking, prevent cross-site tracking. It is checked. It is enabled by default. If you turn that off, then that will stop Apple's blocking of trackers. So if you really want to be tracked, it turns out you can turn that off.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
some people are weird. What can I say?
That's true. All right, Mitch, can you please unmute your microphone and ask your question?
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Was wanting to know how to get that control center little gizmo up in my upper menu bar. I couldn't figure that out.
It should just be there. I mean, there's the control center icon is there by default. Let me see here. If I go into, I know you can't see this, but I'm looking at my system preferences. I don't even see a way to turn it off. I wonder what, no, I can't even drag it out of the menu bar. So as far as I know, it's just there. It's always there, and you can't turn it off. Are you running Big Sur and not seeing it?
I don't see it. Those two little gizmos, they that were one on top of the other or
Right
next to each other. They're not on mine, and I'm on Big Sur beta, latest beta. And I actually went into that accessibility and the screen area to see if I could turn that on. I couldn't find it.
I literally don't know how to turn it off. So you must have some magic, or maybe you found a bug. So on my Mac, on the far right side of my menu bar, I've got the time and date. And then to the left of that, I have the Siri icon. And then immediately to the left of that, I have a little.
I do have it. There it is. I see it now.
I'm relieved because I don't know what to tell you, but I'm glad it's there.
I now understand why my super duper doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. And sorry, I mean, I'm frustrated about that too, because I have been so heavily reliant on bootable duplicates for eons, but I have a book on backing up your Mac that I'm in the process of updating, and it's really, really frustrating to me because I now have to seriously rethink my advice. It's no longer a question of what I think would be the best thing for you. It's a question of what's actually possible. So
do you think Apple will really work with those developers, the key ones, to allow that to happen again?
I don't know. I honestly, I can't even guess. The developer of Carbon Copy Cloner, Mike Bombich, has said that he is working with Apple, but nobody, like, people keep asking me, well, why does Apple whatever? And any question that begins with why does Apple, it's shrug emoji. Like, I don't know why Apple makes the decisions they do. They don't share their decisions with me. And I think a lot of them are really dumb. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, there are 5 minutes. I do have another question. You mentioned how the Mac OS is now looking more like the mobile devices.
Yeah.
Why would you want to run your iPad app on your Mac? Any thoughts
Ah,
on that?
yeah. So there was a little bit of this that I left out. There are a lot of apps that only exist on iOS or iPadOS. A lot of great apps that there simply is no Mac equivalent of. Now, Apple has been trying with Catalyst to make it easier for people developers that already have iOS or iPadOS apps to adapt those into Mac versions. But not all of them have done that. So the idea of this is number one, if there's an app that only exists on your iPad that you like, that's important to you, that for whatever reason there is no Mac version of, now you can use it on your Mac. Maybe you don't have an iPad at all and you would like to get access to some of these apps that are iOS or iPadOS only. So then that will be possible. Now, it could be that there's an app that it exists on both platforms and you bought it, you paid $50 for the iPad app, and the developer wants another $50 to give you access to the Mac app. So that might be another reason you'd want to run the iPad version. Now, I mean, I'm not in this category. So there are at this moment 0 apps on my iPad that I'm like, oh, if only I could run that on my Mac. So maybe I'm just weird, but for me, the iPad is the iPad and the Mac is the Mac. And there are some apps that I use on both platforms, of course, but I would, given the choice, I would always use a native Mac app when I'm using a Mac. But who knows?
Okay. All right, Sue Clark, you had a question about the dock. Can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi.
Hello.
I I have my laptop and also it's plugged into a big screen.
Mhm.
And from time to time, and I don't know how it happens, but my dock, which is at the bottom, suddenly shoots up to the screen, which is a bit of a pain, really. Does the floating dock mean that I could, if it did this, could float it back down to the laptop in a much easier way rather than waiting for something that I do random, which then takes the dock back down to the laptop?
I would say my suspicion is that what you are experiencing is a bug, and the fact that the dock floats is purely a visual thing. So it's not that it's conceptually floating; it's just that the pixels look different. So I don't think that the floating dock will have any effect on that behavior one way or the other. Now, under the assumption that what you are experiencing is a bug, one could hope that Big Sur fixes the bug and that it will stop randomly, arbitrarily moving around. I have not seen that behavior myself, but then again, most of the time I only use one screen. So I don't know how widespread it is. You should be able to go into the displays preference pane and decide where you want your dock to be. But if it's moving on its own to a place that is not where you set it to be, I don't quite know what to say about that. But so on the one hand, I don't want to give you false hope that merely the fact that it floats will make things easier for you. On the other hand, I do want to give you a little bit of hope that maybe if it's a bug, it'll just be fixed.
Oh, thank you. Am I allowed to ask just another quick question?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I've got what is it? It is a MacOS, a MacBook Pro Retina 13-inch early 2015. Now, I did see MacBook Pro early 2015. So does that include my Retina 13-inch display as being compatible with this?
Yes. Yes. So all of the MacBook Pro models, regardless of size or display from, I'm sorry. And actually, I have to correct myself. I'm going back and looking at my list. The list is late 2013 or newer, late 2013.
Oh, well, that's good. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
All right, Joe, it's 12:45. Unless you have anything else to add, time is up. George, would you like to chime in? Wake up,
Yes,
George.
Joe,
There you go.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much. It was a great presentation. And I just want to say that this was an introduction to Big Sur, and there's a lot more to it and a lot more to come. So try to buy that book. And also, Jeff will be talking next week at the meeting about what he will be discussing. He's at this meeting today, so we saw exactly what Joe covered. So we'll be looking forward to seeing everybody next week. Also, I encourage you to fill out the survey. We do go back and look at it and try to make adjustments based on some of the suggestions and so forth. And thank you. And are you going to unmute everybody, Eckert, so we can give a cheer for Joe?
Hooray, hooray.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Bravo, bravo.
Thank you very much for your kind attention. It's been lovely being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. And
Yeah,
thanks,
great.
Joe, very much.
Thank you.
George.
Have a great day, everyone.